Hello, everyone. We're back for another episode of Plug Into Devin. And again, I have with us today Colleen and Jim Copple, who are the founders and owners and leaders at Strategic Applications International. And they have been internationally consulting with communities and countries with respect to policing practices, including work for the Obama administration and work for the state of Minnesota as recently as earlier this year. So they are really tuned in to the Black Lives Matter movement and the issues we're facing with George Floyd's death. So stick around. You don't want to miss this conversation. Jim, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, I think looking at sort of the comprehensive solutions of police management, police unions, how to get entire forces involved in reform and embracing reform, I think that will be an important topic for us to explore.
Great. Colleen, what do you see as the process for getting complete engagement and support from the police in terms of making reforms and to change the practices and use of force policies?
So change happens on a couple levels. It happens at the top. You have to have good leadership with clear ideas of what's going to work. And then you have to have buy-in from their agencies. And so getting that ownership is critical, getting unions on board in that process. I think officers have felt attacked over the last 5 years from Ferguson forward, and have felt defensive, many. But others have really embraced this as an opportunity to understand the issues and to change. So we've seen real leadership over the last couple of weeks as chiefs and officers have joined with protesters rather than using force in ways that may not have been necessary. And we've seen really beautiful examples of that. We've seen the reverse still happening. So it's critical that we get officers involved at the lowest level possible.
Yesterday in Salt Lake, the Black Lives Matter organizer, or at least one of them, challenged the National Guard troops to kneel with her, and they were initially reluctant. But after she pressured them and got them to shake her hand, they agreed and knelt with her.
Wow.
There is hope for reconciliation. But Jim, are there some problems in some places with reluctant unions?
Well, there's a couple of things that are happening. One is, and we saw this particularly at Ferguson, and we've seen it throughout the process, and most recently, is the militarization of policing. And citizens need to be concerned about over-militarization and the amount of equipment, the way they police dress for protection, et cetera. Those are concerns that suggest that they're out to attack as opposed to protect. And this has been a serious issue throughout the process. But unions can be great partners and collaborators in police reform. And we've seen that in a number of communities where at the table, and including the state association in Minnesota, who came on board and supported the recommendations and also condemned the killing of George Floyd. The local union leadership has not been as engaged and not been a part of the solution. And their primary mission is to protect the rights of their officers, but they quite often in that process, they ignore the voice of the community. And the community, it needs to be partners in this process, and the union needs to embrace them and to have that dialogue. So I've been encouraged when I've seen officers kneel or march with or come alongside Black Lives Matters or other protesters in this process. But when you militarize your police, you send a direct message that this is about occupation and it's not about protection. And that's a huge debate going on now in policing.
Even 5 years ago with the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing, there was a real pushback from police unions around the use of guardian versus warrior mentality. And so we've not used that phraseology much because it creates a negative reaction among officers. But the idea that officers are there to serve and protect, and that the goal is that everyone makes it home alive, that should be the philosophy of unions and community and leadership in law enforcement. And so there's still some work to be done, I think, in some places to deal with that. But the community, the police is there to respond to the level of service that the community wants. And if the community says, we are more comfortable with a little less protection and a little more safety because you're not going to use force on us, at least take our lives, unless it's an extreme situation. And we just see force being used in situations that are not extreme situations, and that's what's got people upset.
Yeah. Well, Jim, Colleen, I really thank you for taking the time to have this discussion with me today. You know, we obviously aren't going to solve this discussion in 6 minutes or this problem, but it does give me hope that there are solutions. And I thank you very much for helping us walk toward those solutions. Colleen, maybe you could just take a minute on the way out and tell people how they can learn more about Strategic Applications International.
You can go to sai-dc.com. We recently moved from DC to Utah. We haven't changed our website address. It still says DC, but that's where you can find us.
Fantastic. Well, we're thrilled to have you back in Utah. Thank you very much for taking the time to visit with us today, and we wish you every success in your ongoing efforts around the world, but especially across the country, at helping to implement better practices that protect more lives and respect the sanctity of human life for officers and the public.
Thank you, Devin.
Thank you.
All righty. Let's do some good.
I'm Devin Thorpe. For the last 8 years, I've been working full-time to eradicate extreme poverty, improve global health, and fight climate change. I've concluded that the best way for me to continue my work is to run for Congress to represent the people of Utah's 3rd District. In Utah, we have common shared values. Those things unite us. I believe passionately in our ability to come together, and I believe that working together, we can solve Utah's problems. I'm Devin Thorpe. I'm a Democrat. I'm running to represent the people of Utah's 3rd District.
I'm Devin Thorpe, a candidate for Congress, and I approve this message.